North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Tanya Shrum, and we are joined by North Coast Journal's managing editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill, and our North Coast Journal contributor, Colin Yo. Welcome to you both.
Hello. I'm very excited about having Colin on with us today.
I know, this is my first time with him joining the show. I'm very excited.
And for a lot of people, it's the first time they're going to realize that he's not Chinese.
Ah, man.
I'm sorry, I just have to tease Colin. He has gotten some racist hate mail.
For the radio fans.
Yeah.
Colin is a very nice white man. And
well, white with the asterisk next to it. I've got what you call a face for newspapers. I'm just sort of a hidden persona.
We were talking about the fact that he's a cat dad, so
he's a cat dad.
That also is a great part of your resume.
Yes, but his last name is spelled Y-E-O, and so we have gotten some anti-Asian hate mail. And it makes me laugh as an Asian American woman. I'm like, welcome aboard, Colin. Welcome.
I have a last name that's like power bait for racists. You can just reel them in. They don't know. It's funny enough.
Colin came to me with the idea actually for this week's story.
And he has the cover that he's going to bring to us. Colin, do you want to outline this wonderful story of one of our local treasures in the musical realm of Humboldt County?
Yeah, totally. Without giving too much away, anyone who's been paying attention to orchestral or symphonic music for the last 30 years around here, particularly if you're of my age, kind of like an elder millennial, but of the millennial generation, you know about Carol Jacobson because she not only, like when I was a kid, worked in the schools and worked with children primarily as a instructor, conductor for various youth orchestras and so forth, worked with the high schools, but she's gone on to become rather well known as the conductor and musical director of our fine Eureka Symphony. And something I was not surprised by, but was pleasantly surprised by to see when I moved back to Humboldt in my 30s. I briefly knew Carol when I was a teenager, the remedial type of teenager, but I took a continuation music class with her for a minute, but everyone I knew who had anything to do with music in high school or whatever, all of my peers, if you weren't a theater kid, you were a music kid, they worked with Carol. And one thing I was really struck by when I first started contacting her again, or even seeing her around town or at the symphony, was that energy that I remembered from 26 years ago. Not only still there, but keeping her just the same. I mean, it was like she seemed exactly the same as I recalled her. Just this little ball of just kinetic energy that's just really bright and powerful, and kind of maybe has a little bit of a spark and fire to it. Just a bit of a burn. She's like just someone that you could describe as being brilliant in a very physical, tactile way. And her relationship with the Eureka Symphony has been, as you'll see when you read the story, it's been like her relationship with music in general, where it's something that she wanted in life, and then the pieces sort of fell together, and without there being any sort of planning behind it, she fell into one thing after another, and it all starts with going abroad, and it starts with coming back and working with children. And there's this sort of consistent thread that she's had through her whole career that oscillates between professional, high-level, symphonic playing and globetrotting, and then, right bare bones, right at the beginning, working with kids, educator, pardon me. So that's like an interesting bookend, both of those things. Like these are two very different concepts, but in her life, they're totally complementary and they perfectly make sense. And so I tried to capture that in the story. Hopefully, I did.
I thought it was a wonderful outline of what brought her to the position that she's now been in for the last year, coming up on this season, correct?
Yeah, coming up on oh Lord, I'm gonna get this wrong. 33rd, 31st. Don't quote me. My notes are somewhere around here, but yeah, she's been involved, for the last decade or so. But I've been going to the symphony since. All right, well, I will I'll mess this up. I've been going to the symphony since I came back, particularly since I started writing for the North Coast Journal about 8 years ago this fall, and the quality and the not just the quality performance, but just sort of like the diversity of what's on the programming, I've just noticed has only improved in that period of time. And it's become something that, she herself had told me it's not a professional symphony. It's not like you would discover like in San Francisco or a larger city like Oakland or New York or something. But that doesn't really harm the repertoire at all. And it doesn't speak ill of the performers or the diversity of the programming. I mean, it really is something to go to Arkley and see this place that was built for the acoustics of a symphony, essentially, like actually being filled by the sound of a symphony, and a symphony played quite well to my ears.
Well, and what I also found really special was the when you reached out to folks that had left the area that were musicians and were returning and were able to join up, and how wonderful it was to experience that, back in their hometown.
Yeah, and Clara, the soprano who lives in New York, Lyle, I always get the pronunciation wrong on her last name. I've seen her perform a few times. She pointed out something that's sort of a salient fact to anybody who played music or grew up playing music, myself included. I had a little music career in New Orleans for a while there, but anyone who grew up here playing music, there's something very special, not just about this place, but kind of like the time and place of what the music scene was like through the late 80s, early 90s, early 2000s. There was a lot of opportunities for young musicians. That has receded somewhat as the austerity of the arts everywhere has receded in America, unfortunately. So it's one of those things where it's like the subtext of a lot of this story, if you read through it, is that this is a like amazing thing and only does good things for people's lives from youth to their professional lives, and even if they don't end up playing professionally, which another person I interviewed, Katie Swisher, like she hadn't necessarily gone on to like a professional career, but she always wanted to return to music. But that sort of thing stays with you, and it's like it's incalculable how like precious that is. And Humboldt County, due in large to a lot of people's efforts, but Carol is certainly one of the major players, was a place that was like a fertile ground for that. And so when people return and play with her and talk about what that's like, they're essentially telling the story of what having a childhood foundation in the arts is and how important that is, and what a childhood foundation in music is and how important that is. And you really can't quantify that. It's just priceless.
I think as I was reading the story, the drafts that Colin sent me, a thing that really spoke to me was, there were a couple of people who worked with Carol Jacobson as youth musicians, right, as high school students, and they talked about something similar to what Colin said, which is that coming back was like oh, I get to play again in this really free, low pressure way like I did when I was a teenager. This is incredible. People who had been playing professionally and just really going so hardcore, being coming back to their love of music and their love of playing with other people was really something. And I also found, it was a moment to really reflect on what we lose when we cut off funding for the arts for young people. Um, and some of that is about music, of course, but some of that is about character building. And when Carol was talking to Colin about how she teaches, she said something that really struck me, which was that she always critiqued the music, not the person. Like she would say, this music is not up to the level we want. It's never you are not playing well. It was more about the thing that's happening needs to be improved. Like you're still great no matter what. And I just think that kind of message to a young person is just invaluable.
Yes, and it's often a shame that arts and music programs are always the first things on the chopping block in public education, and especially when it is proven time and time again the value that it brings to people's lives, whether it becomes part of their adult life or not. Those lessons resonate with you throughout the rest of your journey.
Yeah, as you say, it is sort of like the first thing on the chopping block, and there's a tragedy to that because you imagine that here, where within the living memory of, I mean, people my age, I'm not quite that old yet, but uh, you see the difference between what happens when you have that outlet and what happens when you don't, and it's like again, it's an incalculable virtue, but it's also an incalculable loss when it goes away. And I think the way you can measure a healthy society or a healthy culture is how much they put into something like art, like music, for young people that is an unknown, I hate using the term investment because it just seems like dollars and cents, It shouldn't be about that. But for lack of a better term, that investment in younger people's future by giving them an outlet like that, by giving them like a musical education, by giving them an opportunity to do something like that. Like like Clara said, she wouldn't know what her life would look like if that hadn't been the case. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, and so there's a victory in that, but there's a tragedy in that story as well because we can see that receding everywhere we go. It's the austerity of losing the arts is like, what's the point of being alive if we're not making things? Like, cut everything else away, and what do you have? Nothing valuable really. What's the point of being human?
Also, I just want to, if I could just jump in and say that I got to visit with Carol Jacobson. I've never met her before one on one. And I got to visit with her just to take some pictures at her place. And Colin is not lying about the energy level. It is wild. She's got this very energetic dog, and the two of them are just bouncing off of each other. It's kind of wonderful.
Well, it's a wonderful cover story that Colin has brought to us, and I encourage everybody to pick up the journal and read the entire story. It's the biography of, again, dare I say, one of the treasures of the musical community, and we really appreciate Colin bringing us her story. And with that, Jennifer is going to report on some of the continuing work from our outgoing news editor, Thad Greenson, and he brings us more updates on the very unusual situation unfolding in Blue Lake.
Did I not tell you that leaving the journal is like leaving the mob? It's very hard. Also, Thad has been following this story for a long time and was already working on this when his tenure here ended. But wanted to make sure and share what he found in his research, which is, in some ways, not a lot. That is to say, what we have in Blue Lake, for those of you who haven't been following it necessarily, is there is a recall effort. Right now, folks are gathering signatures, and they have until, I believe it's August 3rd. Oh, 2nd, pardon me, August 2nd. I'm not trying to throw anybody off from their signature gathering. They have till August 2nd to gather signatures for this recall. And that is a recall not for one, not for two, but for 3 city council members. So this is different in many ways, right? If they can get 256 signatures, they can do a possible recall, to qualify for the recall for Mayor Sawatsky, for, let me make sure I have everybody's names right here. It would be for Mayor John Sawatsky, Councilmember Kat Napier, and Councilmember Elise Scafani. So if they were all removed, and mind you, we have also a resigned member who needs to be replaced, Christopher Farrar, who resigned in May. So essentially, unless they replace Farrar beforehand, you'd have 4 people missing from the council. What you wouldn't have is a quorum. You know that thing where there have to be enough people attending class in order for us to get anything done? They need a quorum to move on and do things. Apparently, California government code requires a city council to have a quorum of members present to do most things. The things they can do without a quorum are adjourn, call it a night, right? Or order absent members to show up, which seems real convenient if people aren't there. But those are the 2 things you can do. What you can't do is replace people. And if you can't replace people, are you seeing the catch-22? If you can't get a quorum enough to replace people, but you can't replace people to reach a quorum, what happens to your government? It is frozen like a Disney musical. So Thad went and talked to a bunch of people, including Humboldt County Registrar of Voters, Juan Pablo Cervantes. And he said that, they kind of anticipated this in his office, and they were looking, okay, how is this going to play out? They looked through election code and government code. And he said, we ran it by colleagues and everyone's stumped. He is working with a couple of North Coast state legislators, including Assembly Member Chris Rogers and State President Pro Tem Mike McGuire. It's a longer title now. Trying to figure out a way to make it work. Can they, for example, get the supervisors to step in and appoint or certify an election? Can they've looked at a bunch of different solutions, like could they possibly have the lame duck council, the people who are about to leave, call a special election before they vacate their seats? Can the supervisors come in and call the election for Blue Lake? Can they do all these things? These are all lovely ideas. Sadly, there is no precedent, and there's nowhere in the law or state codes that say, yeah, you can absolutely do that. So we're kind of building the bridge as we cross it, right? And Blue Lake City Attorney Ryan Plotz, I guess when Thad talked to him, he asked, he had talked to, a bunch of other people and also done his own research and said there's a gap in the law here and the legislature may have to step in to close it. But essentially what everybody keeps coming back to, all these people, at least the ones that will even make a statement on it, because it's so vague, nobody wants to say, or few people want to say, oh, this is the answer, this is what you can do, etc. As Thad sums it up, there appears to be no precedent and nothing the government or election codes that currently are in place that would allow this to go forward, allow a government to function with this many wheels missing. There was a similar thing that happened in Mission Viejo, and Thad talks about that and how the state Supreme Court handled it. but it still doesn't really give us a roadmap forward. Normally, when something similar happens, you can look back to it and you can say, oh, well, they did this, so we're allowed to do that. And my friends, so far, there's nothing. So it's wild. And again, we are not done with the signature collecting part. So at this point, maybe like Elisa Rosado, who's one of the recall proponents, somebody might say, okay, well, let's pump our brakes because we don't have a plan going forward. She said she considers this a moral issue. This is because the 3 city council people, Sawatsky, Napier, and Scafani, the source of the recall impetus is that they did not adopt a housing element that the state required. And also, they fired, took the resignation from, we're not sure, but parted ways, as it's vaguely put, with city manager Amanda Mager. So this, they say, has placed the city in jeopardy, according to proponents of the recall. And so their feeling is that they can't go forward with the crew that they've got currently. But it does put us in a bit of a catch-22. And I am real curious to see how it works out going forward.
I also take some local pride in Blue Lake coming forward and bringing a very unique situation that will have impacts over the entire state.
I mean, yeah, it's wild, right? We keep on doing special stuff up here in Humboldt County.
But shh, keep it a secret. We're just that crown that is kind of under the hoodie.
Yeah, I mean, I feel kind of amazed at this, and on the one hand, I'm like, this is a little bit scary, right? But on the other hand, I mean,
well, it highlights a missing part of the law as you stated, and so we need to close that
and
gap.
The tiny town of Blue Lake is going to be, I mean, way to go, Blue Lake, taking the bullet for this one instead of leaving it to, I don't know, is Los Angeles going to be stuck here at some point? It seems like we're going to be setting some precedent up here.
Well, and it is fascinating that this particular situation has never come up in a township beforehand,
Yeah, you'd think everything's been done, right? You think everything is already on the internet, but here we are.
Blue Lake finds a way. Well, and once again, I really appreciate you bringing this story to all of the readers, and I really appreciate that, once again, making it something that is slightly more understandable when your head is swirling trying to figure out what's going on in Blue Lake. And with that, we have come to the end of our time for the week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal will be available on newsstands tomorrow, or of course you can always find it online at northcoastjournal.com. My name is Tanya Schrum. Thank you to Jennifer and Colin for being with us. Thank you to all of you for being informed and staying supportive here on the North Coast.